The reason why Kirk Cousins had left the great state of Minnesota was because of their draft plans to draft a quarterback. Now we look today because we all know what happened. We all know what ended up happening. He went to Minnesota, moved out of Minnesota to Atlanta to go to Atlanta, 180 million, and they ultimately drafted Michael Penix. So Kirk Cousins today, not a happy man.
No, I'd be upset too. I was like, okay, you guys want to draft a quarterback in Minnesota. I respect that. You're being upfront with what you want to do. And frankly, if you want to draft a quarterback, I'm not really interested in mentoring one, which was one aspect of it. And I'm not really interested in having someone sit behind me. I want a long-term deal where I'm going to be the starter for 4 years and potentially get another deal, and I don't want to be in a situation where I'm going to be benched or traded to a destination where I may or may not want to go there if the trade pieces don't align there. So free agency, Kirk Cousins gets to walk, goes to Atlanta, and then you lie to the quarterback who is supposed to be your future. After what do? You go 7-10, 7-10, 7-10, all because Arthur Smith was like, you know what is a great offensive game plan? Give Derrick Henry the ball 30 times. Like, yeah, if you give that physical specimen the ball 30 times over and over and over, of course something good is going to happen when you have arguably one of the greatest running backs. Then you have Arthur Smith. He goes there. You have no offense whatsoever. Keep drafting offensive prospects in the top 10. Can't make anything out of them. And then you can't figure out your quarterback situation either. So then you go out and you sign Kirk Cousins when he stated that he left Minnesota because they were going to draft a quarterback, and go right behind his back and do exactly the same thing. If I was Kirk Cousins today, I would ask for a trade. I would go to the front office and be like, hey, man, I left Minnesota because I wanted to be the man on a playoff team. You guys have gone 7-10, 7-10. You just need that extra guy to get over the hump. If you draft an awesome player on defense like Dallas Turner, we could really do something next year because we're not competing with too much with the Buccaneers, maybe still being in a rebuild, not quite there yet with Baker Mayfield. New Orleans definitely rebuilding, and God knows what's going on in Tepperville right now. So we have a real shot if you draft someone in the top 10, but no. So I would ask for a trade.
Yeah, I agree with that there because you think about the players that were available at 8. You had even Roma Dunze, who fell to that very next pick. Right now, their wide receiver room looks good, but not great. Their number 1 being Drake London. You like Drake London a lot more as your number 2. And then they're Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson as well. But the defense was the problem last year. They had not a lot of pressure. Grady Jarrett was kind of their main defensive pressure. And then their secondary, you had Jesse Bates to rely on and A.J. Terrell. But otherwise, their defense was average at best. Go out and get a Dallas Turner, you go get a Latu Latu, or anybody of those calibers, you're looking a lot better. But instead, you draft a guy who won't be seen on the field for at least another 3 years when you're in win-now mode. Extremely questionable pick. And for someone like Kirk Cousins, who had other suitors who were already interested in him, there were plenty of people who wanted to offer him that contract. And ultimately, he sided with Atlanta for everything you mentioned. But now, he feels burned. So you know what do? You ask for a trade, you fuck him over, and Atlanta goes right back down to the bottom.
Yeah, I think Atlanta kind of deserves a curse here where it's like, okay, it's different with what happened with Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay when you draft Jordan Love, because you expect this from the Green Bay Packers because this is exactly how they operated under Brett Favre, and then Brett Favre ended up being mad about that. And then all you have to do is just look at history. They know how to draft quarterbacks, and they also have a track record of, knowing what they're doing. And like the Packers actually have a plan at quarterback where the Falcons are like, okay, say you play devil's advocate and we don't know when we're going to be in a situation where we can draft a quarterback like this again. That's fine. Just be honest with the person that you're bringing in. So there's no harm, no foul there, because potentially Kirk Cousins didn't want to re-sign in Minnesota because he didn't want to have to mentor a quarterback and then have 2 jobs besides just being that quarterback of a team, getting to the playoffs and then getting paid, where he's like, okay, now I'm looking over my shoulder, could potentially be benched if he has more talent. And that doesn't really look good when I could just have one more contract and I'm not going to be able to maximize my money like I want to. And maybe I could have made it work with a different team. And then you could also have a situation where it's like, if you want to draft a quarterback this year, why don't you trade for Dak Prescott if Dallas doesn't want him, because he has 1 year left on his deal. If Dallas doesn't want to re-sign him, then they trade Dak, then Kirk Cousins goes to Dallas. You have your quarterback there. He's accomplished more, been more of a stable factor, hasn't had as many choke jobs as Dak Prescott in the playoffs. And then you have Dak in Atlanta, who may not be there long term. And then he can go get paid somewhere else next year.
Yeah, hell, even Atlanta might even sign him.